Poveglia Island, just a 10-minute boat ride from Venice, is often referred to as the world's most haunted island. Over 160,000 plague victims were buried there, and it's rumored that human ash constitutes more than half of the island's soil. Some came looking for adventure, but left with tales of whispers in the wind, cold spots in the air, and shadows moving on their own. So like, subscribe, and keep watching because dark secrets await you.
Behind me is the most haunted island in the world, where over 150,000 people have died of the Black Plague, and it is completely illegal to step foot on.
Poveglia's horrors didn't start with whispers in the dark or creaking footsteps. They began with death on an industrial scale. During the height of the bubonic plague in the 14th century, Venice was flooded with the sick and dying. The city couldn't keep up. Its leaders needed somewhere to contain the infected, somewhere out of sight and far from the living. So they chose Poveglia. The small island became a quarantine zone. Those with even the mildest symptoms were dragged from their homes, tossed onto plague ships, and sent to the island. There were no treatments, just fields of the sick, the dying, and the dead. Over the years, historians estimate that over 160,000 bodies were dumped or burned on Poveglia. Some were still alive when the fires were lit. Survivors from nearby villages claimed they could see the smoke for days. The stench of rot hung thick in the lagoon. Fishermen still avoid the island today, not just out of superstition, but because their nets sometimes dredge up human bones from the seabed. The plague is long gone, but the screams, some say, still linger. So many corpses were burned that even the soil of Poveglia changed. Geologists say the island's surface is now made up of over 50% human ash. Walk anywhere on it, and you're stepping on remains. There are no gravestones, just an anonymous death layered into the ground. Locals once believed that the very air on the island was cursed. Travelers would return from it sick. Plants that grew there were said to rot from the inside out. At night, strange lights flickered in the trees, sometimes blue, sometimes white, hovering just long enough to be seen before vanishing. No one knew what they were, and no one wanted to stay long enough to find out. Long after the plagues passed, the island sat abandoned, but even then, fishermen told stories. They swore they saw shadows moving between the ruins. Even when the island was empty, campfires would appear at night, with no boat seen arriving or leaving. Moans drifted across the water on still evenings. They told their children never to go near it, not even to play. In 1630, during another outbreak of plague, Venice reopened the island as a quarantine zone. Once again, thousands were taken there, and the legends grew darker. People claimed some of the infected were sent to Poveglia before they even showed symptoms. Healthy people doomed just to keep the disease away. Whole families disappeared overnight. Some were said to have gone mad before dying, scratching words into stone walls with their fingernails. Those carvings, eroded by time, still exist in fragments. By the early 20th century, the island's horror entered a new chapter. In 1922, a mental hospital was built on Poveglia. Italy's psychiatric care at the time was brutal, underfunded, and deeply unregulated. Patients were often poor, unwanted, or simply inconvenient to their families. Once committed, there was no getting out, and on Poveglia, there was nowhere to run. Survivors later claimed the doctors there didn't treat them, they experimented on them. One physician in particular became infamous. He believed that performing lobotomies without anesthesia helped cure mental illness. Screams were heard echoing from the upper floors at night. The worst stories say he conducted surgeries in the hospital's bell tower, sometimes alone, other times with terrified patients strapped to tables. They say you could hear the screams across the water, but no one came to help. Eventually, the doctor himself began to see shadows. He claimed his dead patients followed him, stood at his bedside, whispered in his ears. In the end, he jumped from the bell tower or was pushed, no one knows. Nurses claimed he survived the fall, only to be dragged away by something unseen as he lay broken on the ground. His body was never buried. The bell tower still stands, but it hasn't rung in decades.
They say that the bell tower is the most haunted part, and weirdly, the heat gun brought us right to it. I don't know how to explain that.
Even though the tower's bell was removed long ago, locals claim to still hear it ring on quiet nights. Tourists have said they've heard it too, just one chime, usually around midnight. The island is supposed to be deserted, but sometimes you can see a faint glow coming from the tower window, as if someone is still up there watching. Italian authorities don't bother to respond to those reports. Officially, no one is there, but fishermen say otherwise. More than a few have claimed to see a tall figure standing at the edge of the bell tower, unmoving, just before the single bell toll. They never stay long enough to get a better look. Urban explorers who have broken into the old asylum describe an atmosphere that defies logic. The temperature inside drops sharply as you pass through the halls. Every window is shattered, every floor creaks, but the building doesn't feel abandoned, it feels occupied. People have recorded whispers in Italian, even when completely alone. They describe conversations that never seem directed at them, like walking through invisible arguments with voices overlapping, cutting in and out. One man described seeing a wheelchair roll down the hallway by itself. It stopped right in front of him. He turned and ran. Others have claimed to hear the dragging of chains, the slamming of distant doors, and the sharp, sudden cry of a woman echoing from the surgical rooms. Inside the old medical office, a rusty examination chair still sits upright, bolted to the floor. It's been scratched with symbols. No one knows what they mean. No one wants to sit in it. Not all the horror is ghost stories. Some of it is just unexplained. In 1968, the hospital was officially shut down. The government declared the island unsafe, structurally unsound. That was the story. But locals believe something else forced the closure, that too many people had disappeared. The staff no longer felt safe. Since then, attempts to sell the island have all failed. Even when a private buyer was found in 2014, their restoration plans mysteriously halted. Construction workers refused to return. The equipment broke down. Materials vanished. Locals say the island won't let itself be reclaimed. To this day, bones are still found on the shores of Poveglia. The island is eroding. With each storm, bits of shoreline fall away, revealing mass graves just beneath the surface. Skulls, femurs, fragments of ribs. Archaeologists have confirmed the remains are consistent with mass plague burials from the 1600s. Visitors sometimes find these bones half buried in sand. Others find them arranged into strange shapes, as if someone or something pulled them from the earth and placed them deliberately. One visitor once took a femur as a souvenir. They returned it days later, visibly shaken. They said they heard footsteps in their home every night, scratches on the floor. Their dog refused to enter the room where the bone was kept. Italian law now forbids unauthorized visits to Poveglia. Still, some dare to go. In 2016, a group of thrill seekers took a boat out to the island, armed with cameras. They stepped onto the broken dock and wandered the hospital ruins. What they filmed was never made public, but witnesses say the group returned changed. One refused to speak, another claimed something followed them back. Neighbors reported lights in the man's apartment turning on by themselves. A neighbor swore they saw a small girl staring from his window. Even though the man lived alone, he moved out within the month. Boaters tell a story of a man who tried to spend the night alone on Poveglia. He docked at dusk and walked inland with a backpack, flashlight, and camera gear. He radioed his friends to say everything seemed calm. He was never heard from again. Authorities searched for days. They found his boat still tied up. His gear was scattered through the hospital halls. Nothing to suggest a struggle. The only thing they did find was a camera. Its battery was dead. The footage was corrupted, except for one file. It showed the man standing in a room, pointing his flashlight toward a corner. The beam flickered, and a shadow moved behind him. Then the screen went black. Even during the day, those who've stepped foot on the island describe a constant feeling of being watched, not from buildings or windows, but from the trees. Thick olive groves cover part of Poveglia. It's where some of the older plague pits were dug. Even now, they remain sunken depressions in the earth, overgrown but visible. Explorers have said they caught glimpses of faces in the trees, pale, wide-eyed, unmoving. Sometimes, when they turned quickly, they saw a shaped duck behind the trunk, but no footsteps. They never found anyone there, but they stopped going back. Inside the hospital is a room with peeling wallpaper. Faded drawings are still scrawled across the wall. Stick figures, houses, smiling suns. No one knows why this room existed. There were no child patients listed in hospital records, and yet toys have been found in this room, some disturbingly clean, others partially melted. People say that if you leave an object in the center of the room, like a coin or a flashlight, it'll be moved when you return. Some explorers swear they've heard a child humming, always just out of sight. One woman claimed her hair was pulled. Locals say Poveglia is cursed not because of one event, but because of the layers of suffering stacked upon it. There's no ceremony, just pain buried in the soil, fused into the bricks, soaked into the air. When the wind blows across the lagoon at night, some say it carries voices, like the island is remembering everything all at once, and no matter how many centuries pass, it refuses to forget. So, was it just a tragic past, or is something still trapped on that island? Let us know what you think in the comments, and if real stories where history rots into horror keep you up at night, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because some places weren't abandoned by chance. They were sealed off for a reason.